Listen, if you can run a mile, run a race. You know what? Run a marathon. Outrun a movie star. If you can ride a bike, ride that thing. Ride a bull. Ride a tougher bull. Let's watch this. What kind of bull is that? If you can move your hips, if you can dance, move your legs, move your feet, move the ball. Is that PK? Score the goal. Yeah, that is PK. You like to fight? Well, pick on someone your own size. Pick on someone twice your size. Pick on him. That's not good. Oh, lesson learned. If you can play table tennis, serve like that. Beat the champ. Beat her mentor. Come on, you got this.
Quiet, please.
Beat Serena.
Thank you.
If you can beat your friend one-on-one, beat him. Steal it. Take it. Sorry, girls. Now, take your talents to the streets. Beat the street court legend. That's good. Beat that guy. Hold on. We've been waiting for this. That was nice. Good luck with that.
We have a interesting lean history at Nike. Starting back in 1998, obviously that started all back in our manufacturing facilities, and to this day they are very focused on lean. That progressed into our product creation functions, and quickly we saw that expand into multiple functions around the globe. I must say that lean is not a process, or lean doesn't really run Nike. If you go to many parts of the company, you won't see it around the company. But there are certain pockets of lean where it's very, very successful. And one pocket that was extremely successful was in 2009 when our logistics center in Lochdal, Belgium actually embraced lean. It was very interesting for me because I started my career at Lochdal as a general manager of the Lochdal facility about 10 years earlier. So going back at 2009 and actually experiencing what they have done with lean was my source of inspiration. I think we all need to have inspiration to be able to drive a change culture in a company, and you got to find that source of inspiration. And I was very fortunate to go to Lochdal and actually see lean in operation. And the one thing that I took from there that was very, very powerful was this concept of an Obeya. The concept of actually being able to stand in a room and look at a strategy, look at performance, and have a conversation with a group of people about how well that process was running, and also where the problems were. And the challenge I had was, how do you bring that into a technology organization? So I came across a book, Lean IT, by Steve, and a co-author. And that also inspired me in saying there must be a way for us to be able to bring this into our technology organization. Started our second part of the journey. In 2009, actually this is a global change that happened, is that our IT organization actually changed their name to LBS, Lean Business Solutions. And Ronald Panacher at that time was our CIO, and we had the Lean organization global reporting up through IT, and he felt it was very appropriate to change, and we started to see a lot happening in the technology arena at that moment in time. The advantage I had as being responsible in Europe is that Lean started to also report to me. So we had a very strong in-house knowledge in the technology organization to be able to start our Lean journey in Europe. In 2012, we created our very first Obeya, and I'll go into some more details about that in a few moments. In 2013, we actually expanded the use of the Obeya and Lean beyond just the one function, the PMO function, to all of technology in Europe. And I'll go into a little more details on that. And then where we are today is taking that, what we feel is a success today, and expanding that into the business engagement model. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that.
Bill Bowerman was a lean thinker before the word lean was ever used to describe a better way of doing business. In his 24 years as the head track coach at the University of Oregon, his teams won 4 national titles and had 10 undefeated seasons. He did this because he understood that team success wasn't about individual superstars. It was about a collection of individuals, some great, some good, and some mediocre. It was about aligning those individuals to a common purpose and a common goal, and managing the complexities of individual performances on any given day. Well, in LBS Europe, we had some particularly sticky problems. So in 2010, we adopted lean strategy deployment as a way to get the team aligned and to get more of the members involved. As strategy deployment evolved, one team in particular, LBE Europe, realized that managing the complexity of projects, portfolio, transition management, and lean engagements was overwhelming. This is how they used the lean principles of visual management and team empowerment to create an Obeya to overcome those problems.
Having the strategy up on the wall gives us much more clarity on what we have to do as a team and as an individual, and why we have to do it.
Since we have the Obeya room and since we have our strategy wall, I've never been so clear what to focus on. If it's not on the A3, I'm not working on it.
It is a fact that people gain 75% of what they know visually.
So I can walk in the Obeya room and see right away what the other PMs are working on, what's coming our way next fiscal year, without any detailed, extensive meetings.
For me, the Obeya space simplifies complexity and visualizes progress.
Like Nike, lean thrives on the fact that there is no finish line. We aspire to live up to the standards that Bill has set for us, to win every year and then to win again, to align our team to the critical goals needed to succeed. We have a long way to go. Clearly, this Obeya will continue to improve.
In case you're wondering who Bill Bowerman is, he was referenced in the video. That is actually one of the co-founders of Nike, together with Phil Knight. And the reason we wanted to show that is a kind of a promotion video that we made after we actually implemented the very first Obeya. And you can see kind of a negative picture of it here. It was our first Obeya. It was very much focused on one function within the technology organization. That was our lean business enablement function, which did all the portfolio management and project management, et cetera. And it took us about 6 months to go through a process of getting it to the point where we felt that we could actually use it as an Obeya. One of the important things that we found during that first journey into the Obeya was that there are a number of items that we needed to focus on that we learned. Number one, our culture. We found that in order to do this, it had to be a team success. It could not be myself as a leader saying to the organization, you have to do that. We had to create an environment where we could get people together and that they would then find the strength, the vision, and the ownership of creating the actual Obeya. The next thing is we have to invest in our people. There was a large investment that we put into training. Every single employee went through various types of trainings, different levels of trainings, but every employee had been trained. I mentioned a bit earlier about the book. What we also did is we gave everybody a copy of the book. We put it into a picnic basket with a bunch of food and drinks and told them to stay home for 1 or 2 days and actually read the book. Because quite often we give books and people take it goes in the bookshelf, and you see it all over in all the offices, lots of books. I can guarantee you most of them have not been read. So what we did is said, go home, take the time off, here's some snacks, and read the book. And then we had an offsite where every person had to come back and provide a summary of what they learned out of the book. And that gave us a lot of ideas on how we could take this to the next step. Tools, lots of tools. I'll be very honest, I don't consider myself at all anywhere close to a lean expert, but things like the use of strategic deployment was mentioned, A3, process mapping, a bunch of other tools that we were training our employees on in order to get this whole concept of lean into the organization. Coaching, that's why I would love to have Irena standing next to me, because at that time I had Dave, who was in the video, but certainly you have to have a coach in this process. You have to have a person that is actually on your side, that has the expertise to actually help you implement this change. You got to keep in mind that going through the change at the very early stages is all incremental work. Nobody has time available to sit there and invest in lean. They're fully loaded. So what we found is by having a lean coach that was dedicated to that, number one, brought the expertise that we needed to be able to help us move this forward. She also created a lot of her own capacity, because a lot of the stuff we had to put onto the walls, she would get from individuals and she would put them up on the walls. And she also kept the momentum in the organization and made sure that we kept true to investing in the people and getting the people involved. So for us, no coach, no success. And this is where Irena would be standing up here telling about my role, so I feel a little bit weird talking about my own role here in this, but I'll make an attempt at that. At the beginning of the video, I said I got some inspiration, and that inspiration for me was very, very important. I still have it today. And as you're going to be a leader of trying to drive any kind of a major change process in your organization, I believe you have to have that inspiration. You have to have a vision. You don't know necessarily how you're going to get there, but you know you need to do something and you need to help the organization get there. So certainly I feel that that was part of my role in this entire process. And it goes into a lot of details of, again, do you have the people, do you invest the right budget into it, et cetera, but that is a role that I had to play. I have to also tell people that problems were good. And I'll give you an example at the end of the presentation about a particular problem that was, on one hand, comical, but it really sent home the message to the employees that it's okay that we find problems, because that's what we actually are trying to do. And I had to communicate the value. I had to be sure that what we were doing within the lean, in the technology organization would be projected beyond just our own organization. And in order to do that, we had to, first of all, understand ourselves of what did we have and was that actually successful. So we went through our own PDCA. You know, it's not an event, it's almost a way of looking at what we were doing. It required a high level of effort during the whole journey. But the thing that I found the most interesting at a certain moment in time is once we had a number of iterations of the information on the wall, we were able to stand back, look at that wall, and say, is that who we are? Because you had everything in front of you. And we also asked ourselves, is that who we want to be? Because you start finding out that by looking at the information and how you want to project yourself was not really the way that we wanted to be. And we also found that much of what we were actually putting up on the walls, which we thought we were proud of, was not even aligned to the strategy of the company. I'll give you one example. We had a project manager that was fully dedicated to a program to investigate our lease car policy in the company. I had our .com vice president knocking at my door saying, I need project management support to roll out .com. Where would you think the priority should be? It was certainly not in the lease car project. But we start, and I'm sure that you would still come across those problems irrespective if you had the Obeya. But having that type of insights in one room made all the difference to us, because we were also able to communicate that to the various people in the organization. And that led us to shared success. And at a certain moment in time, you know, people started coming down to our organization because they were hearing about this thing called Obeya, visual management. We're starting to encourage people to come down. We'd have meetings in the room. We'll be able to use the information that's on the wall. So it started to feed itself. And actually, the CIO, the reason that video was made, because the CIO came in and he says, this is so cool, we have to have a promotional video, and that was one of the reasons why we made that promotional video. So the question was, what was next? So we're going to jump into the future and where we are today. In order to do that, we had to first of all understand our... So this is a picture of our current Obeya. You only see 2 of the 4 walls. Apologies, I thought I'd keep it simple. Let me just quickly explain to you what you're looking at. On the left-hand side here is actually our strategy wall. So we have been able, in our opinion, to be able to take the Western European and the Central and Eastern European geographies, because that's who we support. We've taken their strategies now, and we have aligned all of our work to their strategic imperatives. And then you find in the middle we have a number of items in our business plan that we feel that we need to focus on. There are metrics, and there are A3 teams associated to all of those metrics. At least those metrics where we need to do improvements upon. The far wall is what we call the Create the Future wall. That's where we have all of our capabilities. That's a high-level overview of the 103 programs or projects that we actually are executing on behalf of Nike in Europe. The wall that you don't see, which is this wall, is actually the Run the Business wall. That is where we have every single morning at 8:30 a team meeting to look at all the P1, P2 problems, after action reviews, root cause analysis. That is a meeting that I attend every morning with my staff and other members to make sure that we're on top of the issues that we face as a technology organization day in and day out. So for all intents and purposes, you could call this an Obeya. You could also call it a war room or a general operating room. Give it any title you want to, but it's a central hub of where all the activities take place. I'll come back to this in a second. This is a picture of a wall in our TIS organization, Technical Infrastructure Services. What we have now is not only the Obeya, the main Obeya, we now have an Obeya concept in all the other functions. As I said at the beginning, it was first our LBE organization, and we've now replicated that throughout the organization. And this is a picture of the wall inside the organization. It's actually quite a bit larger than that. But what's important to understand is that that is a double click, so to say, of the information that's in the main Obeya. An example of that would be, a simple example would be the budget. So we have a pretty simple target. We have to stay plus minus 2% in budget. I have the aggregated budget numbers in the main Obeya. When you walk into the TIS area, he will have his budget on the wall, and you'll find that back in all the various departments. You aggregate that up, it gives us a total number. It's interesting it's on the wall because it's visible for everybody. So the power of visual management is you just don't keep it for your leadership team or your management team, you keep it visible for all the employees. I'll give you a couple of examples of that in a moment. So a bit of the learning at this moment in time of trying to expand the success of our original Obeya was, how do you get that spread throughout the organization? We had a lot of energy in the one pilot in the LBE organization. So one would say, wow, that's successful. Everybody would be willing to embrace it because we want to have the same thing. Well, forget it. That's not the way it works in reality. In reality is everybody, they're very busy. They don't want to invest the time. They get the, hey, it's not invented here syndrome. So it was very difficult for us to say, hey, let's expand this concept of the Obeya into the rest of the organization. And one of the ways that we did that, which worked very well for us, is that we actually used strategic deployment and our lean coach to actually take us through that process and end up having people contribute to how we take the overall strategy and bring that back down to measurable metrics and goals for the entire organization. And we had a number of offsites, and the lean coach is the person that runs those offsites, not me. I participate as an equal partner in the team, and the lean coach takes us through a number of tools, and therefore it's not Fred Mathijssen standing there telling my leadership team that you have to do that. We included them into the process. We went through a painful process. It was not easy, But what really happened at the end of the day is we ended up building a strategical plan, a business plan, and the goals for the year as a combined team. And what we started to see is people started to embrace it. That one wall I just showed you from TIS, Leon Derricks, who is our TIS director, he was the most negative person at the beginning and said, I'm not going to be doing this because I do not see the value. We have monthly reviews now. When I go to his organization, he has the best run organization that we have at this moment in time because he was able to switch and find the power of using Obeya and visual management. So an operating ecosystem. Ecosystem seems to be the buzzword around these days, so we thought we'd use it for something. So in this case, we use it for an operating ecosystem. What we mean by that is what you find out when you have an Obeya and you have this information, you want to have a structured way to actually use the information. And we actually sat back and said, okay, what are we actually doing in sharing all of this information? Nike, like many companies, we are a meeting, we have a meeting culture. We're crazy about meetings. Our whole day is full of meetings, meetings, meetings. So what we did is we took a step back and actually start to ask ourselves, what meetings are we having? What information are we sharing in those meetings? And if we're sharing information in those meetings and it does not exist in the Obeya, then we have a problem. Either it needs to be in the Obeya or we shouldn't be sharing it. Because the information that we share to the business should be related, in most cases, to our overall strategy. In our reporting, we do lots of reports, lots of departmental reports, status reporting. We also reviewed the reporting and said, okay, how are we reporting? If we're reporting information that people have to collect elsewhere other than the stuff that we create for the Obeyas, then again, ask yourselves, do we have a problem? And metrics, another area which companies spend tons and tons and tons of time in collecting data to show a metric. And I think we spend very little time actually looking at what the metric is telling us. So we reduced the metrics down to a handful of key metrics. In the Obeya, we have 6 key metrics in there that we run Technology Europe with. Sorry, double click on that, you'll see that there's many more in the different departments, but at the highest level, we've tried to simplify that. Flexible standards. So, what we did, and we made a mistake along the way, is we thought that having a standard and a template for everything in our implementation would be the right way to go. And what we found out very quickly is that stifled the creativity. Nike is an enormously creative organization, and people still wanted to have their fingerprints. They wanted to put that creativity into their work. So there are areas of our lean processes in our Obeya that we do have standards, an A3. Everybody needs to use the same A3. But we started to let go a bit of trying to enforce templates into this process, and then at the danger of actually making it more bureaucratic, to find that right balance between allowing people to get their fingerprints on it and make it their own. In this case, less is actually more. Education. One of the things that we've found when we get new people into the organization and into the room, that can be new employees, business partners, external vendors, when they walk in, normally the reaction that you get is, wow, which makes you feel good. Because, hey, we put effort into this and people can see the value by actually showing that. Oddly enough, the next reaction you get is, this must be a huge amount of effort. And the truth is actually the opposite. So you need to educate people on why we do this and what are the benefits of actually having an Obeya. And certainly one of the big benefits that we have found is if you really stay true to what you put into that Obeya, and you really believe that about 80% of the information that you need to be sharing to the organization resides in that Obeya, if you are able to keep it up to date, then what you find is you save tons and tons of time in preparing for all these meetings. How many times do we have to sit there and create PowerPoints because we're going to a meeting? You put a lot of time into it. Well, I can tell you, that room is where we hold most of our meetings. We have our senior steering committee meetings take place in that room. We have employee meetings take place in that room. We have functional monthly steering committees where the functional directors come to that room and we have the meetings in that room. The reason we do that is because if we're going to be sharing information with them, we don't want to build PowerPoints. We want to be able to point to the wall and say, this is what we want to share with you today. It also extends not only into the functional data that we present, but we're able to sit there and say, be aware, if we're talking to finance, that here's a status update for sales of a number of projects that you need to be aware of, finance, because it doesn't impact you directly. It will impact you indirectly, but you need to be aware of it. And by having an Obeya, having that data available, you can do that. There are many other benefits to this, but I'll pass on that for now. So business engagement, I said at the very beginning, I hope you'll get a sense at the end of this that we've been able to improve the business engagement. What we found in our journey is that we were starting to create information that was more aligned to the strategic direction of Nike Europe. And we as a technology organization, an IT organization, we're supporting Office, we're a cost in the eyes of many people, and we were not really seen as an equal partner to the business, and that was very frustrating. And we kept trying to get closer to the business, and the only tension we ever got was if there was a major problem, and then all of a sudden people started to shout, and they knew where to find us. So we had to figure out a way, how are we going to actually build that bridge into the business? And what we did is we actually made an organizational structural change. We created a new function that we call a functional tech director. That functional tech director is a senior person that reports to me, and that person, for all intents and purposes, is a functional IT director. That person now sits on the staff of our finance organization, or our supply chain person sits on the staff of the supply chain organization. We have an HR FTD that sits on the staff of the HR organization, etc. That has made a major difference for us in building the bridges into the organization. There's an important piece is that we started to understand more about what the business were doing, so we could challenge whether what we had put in our business plan is still correct, because we had that closer connection. But also, we now had a means for pulling the people into our process and sharing the information that we do on a day-to-day basis in running the business, or in our capability by able to having that function on their staff. The next big challenge is going to be to get me on the staff of the general leadership team in Europe. We're getting close in one of the GEOs, and the other one I haven't convinced Bert yet that that's needed, so I'm still working on that one. But it is a process, and I think that we've made a major step forward in actually making a structural change, which I'm convinced we would not have made had we not had the ability to be able to share the information that we show in the Obeya. So at the end of the day, you got to ask ourselves, why do all of this, and what's the value? You have to have a value proposition. You got to convince yourself as a leader of driving this process that there truly is a value to Nike. So I'm going to show you here 4 more slides about some metrics. I'm not sure how relevant they would be for you, so we selected 4 of them. But to give you an indication of how we actually, or what type of information we're logging, how we share it to the organization. The first one is what we call, would you recommend a friend? That is our employee satisfaction metric. We do it twice a year. We ask one question. That is, would you recommend a friend to work in Nike Technology Europe? Yes or no? And the second thing we ask at that is they can't exit until they put a comment in. Sometimes a person will put a space bar. Okay, that happens. But we ask people to give us a comment. We ask them to tell us what we're doing well if they said yes. And at times they'll say yes, and they'll give some negative comments. And if they answer no, then we ask them why. And it's a very simple process, and we've had lots of debates whether this is right or wrong. For us, it's working for the time being, so we're going to continue doing that. And when we set this journey out, we were scoring 69% in our metric And our goal was to get at 75% at that moment in time. That was a couple of years ago. Where we're at today is actually we're at 82%. And we have in the high 70s response rates by the way, because it's such a simple questionnaire to answer. It's not a long, drawn-out process. And one of the things we believe why we're getting a high score, and we're quite proud of that score, at least within Nike, is in the background you see a wall, and that wall is actually in the area, the coffee corner area, and the information they provide us through that survey is shared to them on a monthly basis. We have what we call a Get Wired session. It's on a Thursday every month. We have snacks, food, beer, stand-up session, and I stand up there with a couple of other employees because we let a lot of the employees talk to this. And we actually tell them where we are on our training budget, how much training we have executed, who, not at a name level, but at a function level, is behind their training metrics. We share open positions because one of the feedback is there are no growth opportunities. So we share a lot of information that comes out of that survey. We keep it up to date, and we do that on a monthly basis. Another area around our budget, so we saw that there were opportunities to improve in a number of areas of our budget, and you know, it's lots and lots of work going on in that area. One that I just pulled out here was around mobile costs. We control the mobile cost budget for the headquarters, and this number actually relates to what we've been able to achieve in the last year. So we actually had an A3 team look at what was going on with the mobile costs. And you know, this famous thing of data roaming, which is killing us. And by changing the way that we were communicating to the employees and providing information to the employees up to the senior level of the company, we've been able to reduce our mobile telephone bill in 1 year by 60%. And it's, believe me, it's a big number. I can't share it to you because the communication people would kill me. But it's a big number. So we're quite proud of that success. Agile, I spoke to Mary, I believe it was Mary last night, briefly. I'm not sure. I thought I was going to take this out, but I left it in anyway. I'm not going to pretend to be a Agile expert, but in our Luckdown facility, they've been using Agile for a couple of years, and I asked them, I said, hey, give me something that I can tell you guys of, you know, what are you guys seeing as a result of actually using Agile in our distribution center? And what they've said, the number was slightly higher than that. I was nervous to put a higher number on there. But they're saying that there's about a 30% reduction of post-implementation incidences that they're seeing by actually implementing Agile in our distribution center in Luckdown. And last but not least, I mentioned a bit earlier, return on investment, 2,136%. So I'm sure we'd all be happy if every one of our projects would be able to achieve that type of return. The reason I put this on there, it goes back to our very first Obeya. When we started to ask the employees, you know, the project managers actually, to come up with what their projects were returning on ROI, they put that number up in the room. And I can remember I walked in there and I thought it was a joke. And they said, no, that's what the calculation told us. So it was an interesting moment in time because everybody knew it was wrong. And there were many root causes about, you know, were people understanding how to calculate it, you know, how many projects even had a ROI. And we left it on the wall, you know, because at the beginning I said one of the things you got to be able to promote is that problems are good. If that's a problem, then don't hide away from it, show it. And we actually had it visible on the wall for all the employees when we did reviews, or even when my management came into the room, we actually had that up on the wall. And we actually told them, we said, look, obviously, when you look at benefits realization within Nike, we are not doing a very good job. Not only in reporting a number, but how the company holds us accountable to realize benefits of the projects that we execute. So that number has now gone down to where it should be. Again, I'm sorry I can't disclose what the number is, but if anybody would ever come into our project management area and look on the project wall, you'll see that every project has an ROI associated to it, and they are in the area of what we would consider to be normal. So there is no finish line at Nike, and it's again another great branding slogan, but it surely is something that we believe in, and that applies very neatly to to the journey that we're on. It is a journey. You know, I have no idea today if what we have is good or bad. I don't know. It's one of the things I had a conversation with Steve about is, you know, how do you as a leader or an organization know when you're actually doing the right thing? What does success look like? And it's a hard thing to grasp. I think that it'll probably look differently in every single one of your organizations. But certainly I get inspired by the fact that we have a process that now has a large following. It seems to be very successful, and therefore, you know, there will be no finish line, and we'll continue to focus on this. Thank you.